due to the coronavirus pandemic that the governor has declared a disaster. A verbatim recording of this meeting will be made available to the public. In addition, Library Director Lauren Rosenthal is physically present at the library for. Also, this public notice, due to the current public health concerns, this meeting is being conducted electronically. Anyone wishing to observe and/or comment must email the library board at Fox River Valley Public Library District.info no later than 12 p.m. on Tuesday, July 21st, and will receive online access to the meeting. If you do not have electronic access and would like to make a public statement, you can call the library at 847-428-3661 before 5 p.m. on Tuesday, July 21st, and leave a message indicating that you would like your message to be read into the record during the public comment section of the meeting. A record of this meeting will be available on the library's website. A recording of this meeting will be available on the library's website by Friday, July 31st. Okay, having said that, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees on July 21st, 2020 at 7:02 p.m. May we have a Pledge of Allegiance, please? Do we have our flag?
Flag, can you see it?
There it is. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are we still there? Okay. Through the magic of the internet, we're all here again. Is Chris make it yet? Well, we'll find out here in just a second. Can we have a roll call?
What, Richard, I can stay since internet seems to be okay here. If you need me to, instead of doing the pro tem.
Okay. Okay, so we don't need a pro tem. You feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you take the roll call, please?
Oh, except I don't have the sheets. No, I can't. I don't have the sheets to do any of the stuff. Chris has them all, and Chris is on. I saw her down in the bottom.
Chris, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. We would like to appoint you as Secretary Pro Tem for the evening. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, may I have a motion to appoint Chris as Secretary Pro Tem?
So moved. That was Nikki.
Second, Mike Tennis.
Okay. Since we're going for a Secretary Pro Tem, the chair will call the roll. Dave?
Here.
No, it's to appoint Secretary Pro Tem.
I'm sorry.
So the yes.
Yes.
Christina?
All right.
Christina?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And Richard, yes. Okay. So Chris, as Secretary Pro Tem, would you call the roll for the meeting, please?
Yes. Dave?
Here.
Chris here. Mike?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Nikki?
Here.
Christina? Here. Richard?
Yes, here. Okay, we have a quorum.
So everybody's here.
Okay, thank you for that. Next item is public comment. The board recognizes its responsibility to provide an opportunity for anyone wishing to comment at any meeting to do so. Due to the current public health concerns, The July 21, 2020 meeting will be conducted electronically. Any person viewing the meeting online and/or wishing to comment will be accommodated in accordance with the public notice detailed above, which I read previously. Citizens will not be required to sign in to comment. Do we have anyone that's with us electronically that would like to make a comment? Not hearing any. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to make a comment? Has there been anyone that left a message they would like read into the record?
There was
Lauren?
not. Nobody called.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the president's report. The only thing I have, last month, or at our last meeting, I had asked Christina and Chris to perform the review of secretary's records for the IPLAR report. Has that been completed?
Yes.
Yes.
Has that been completed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that will then become part of the IPLAR report, one of the necessary elements. That's all I have for President's report tonight. Can we go to the Director's report, please?
Okay, we're going to start out the director's report tonight with the safe reopening presentation. Assistant Director Heather Zabsky is going to walk the board through the process that the library went through from the time that we closed in March until where we're at now. So Heather, thank you for your presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I'm a little bit nervous. I'm sharing my screen, and when I did it earlier today with Carrie, we had a little bit of technical difficulties. So if it winds up that my slides are not advancing, please let me know. Okay. Gonna go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully everything will work seamlessly.
Good.
Okay. Okay, can you guys? Is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So today I'll be going over our library's efforts to provide ongoing library service during this unprecedented ongoing health crisis. Specifically, I'll be highlighting the efforts and achievements of the Safe Reopening Taskforce, which I've had the pleasure of leading. Though I wish our community never had to go through these difficult times, I'm proud of the work we've accomplished so far. Through the work of the task force, we've been able to reintroduce services safely and more quickly and effectively than many of our neighboring libraries. Okay, I just switched slides. You guys see the new slide?
Yes.
Sweet, okay. I think this will go well. Okay, this document may or may not look familiar to you. Is the response to the pandemic established by the Pritzker administration. Our task force has used the phases as a guideline for what library services we are able to provide and what safety precautions we have in place at the library. And I'll be walking us through our responses to each phase 1 through 4. So here is a timeline of our library's early response to the pandemic. I put together the Safe Reopening Task Force in mid-April, and we began meeting just about a month after we had closed the library and stopped having staff report to the building at all besides Michael. By that point, we had accepted that our response to the pandemic was going to be long-term and ongoing. As soon as it became clear on Friday, March 13th, that we would need to close the library for an extended period of time, something previously unthinkable, management team began meeting to figure out how best to continue to provide library services to patrons. Managers and staff worked from home throughout March, April, and early May, transitioning our usual services into digital ones. Special highlights of this time period include adult and teen services greatly ramping up ordering of digital content, youth services pioneering digital story times, and we later expanded programs to offering live programs via Zoom for both adult and teen services and youth services. And we worked to quickly change our planned summer programming, including our annual summer reading challenge and our new this year One Book, One District program into events that were available online. And relating to the One Book, One District event, a upcoming event that I'd like to plug is this weekend. We will be having the author of our chosen title, The Rise and Fall of Dinosaurs, do a live Zoom question and answer session this Saturday at 1 p.m. It will be facilitated by our very own adult and teen services staff. The author, Steve Broussat, lives in Scotland, though he's originally from Ottawa, Illinois. It's also—
Oh my gosh, my sister has met him and heard him speak multiple times. I didn't make the connection.
Oh, okay, cool.
He's my 9-year-old niece's idol.
Oh, wow.
And I'm from Ottawa. That is where I'm originally from. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Now I got to read the book.
Cool.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry to mean to slow
You
your
don't
roll, but the fact the minute you said his name and like Ottawa, Illinois, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the guy.
You don't have to have read the book to participate in the discussion. It says that right there in the text. So don't feel like if you haven't read it, you shouldn't join. You should still join.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And so it's awesome that we get to have the author participate, even though he lives so far away. And this is a great example of how staff thinking creatively has allowed us to offer unique content to patrons that we wouldn't have been able to in the pre-COVID environment. Likely we would have thought he lived too far away to have him come to our library. So kudos to Jason, who suggested this program idea and reached out to the author to arrange the program. So here are some of our offerings during phase 1, including our What I'm Reading campaign on social media, where staff took pictures of what books they were enjoying while the library was closed. And we included links to digital content where patrons could access the titles. Stay at Home Bingo, which promoted both online activities and supporting local businesses in our community. Additionally, through continuing to issue online library cards, we were able to give patrons digital access to materials, even if they didn't have a library card before we closed. And we issued 180 library cards before we reopened in July. The SRO task force is composed of, or Safe Reopening Committee task force is composed of 10 different staff members, including representatives from all public service departments, facilities, and HR. It's called SRO for short. And the goals of the task force are to research and implement procedures to ensure staff safety and reopening our services to the public, gather feedback from frontline customer service staff on issues relating to their safety, and make staff feel safe and included in reopening decisions. What do? We regularly monitor all things COVID-19, including researching articles online, following library networking groups, and viewing any relevant webinars. We determined what personal protective equipment was necessary for each phase of reopening, as well as developing procedures to safely provide customer service. Through our regular meetings, we're able to quickly respond to staff concerns expressed either via email to the group or through an anonymous online survey. Safety is the forefront of everything we do. We use the Restore Illinois plan to return services in stages. Since this is an unprecedented situation, the task force plans very hard for each stage, but realizes that unanticipated things might come up, and we will alter our plans as necessary. We have 3 sub-task forces that meet as needed. The logistics task force primarily focuses on stuff that's facility related, including signage, routing people through parking lot, those sort of things. Additional services is focused on providing reference services and technology assistance. And then the scheduling subtask force explores how to provide service while maintaining a limited amount of staff in the building. Because of the very focused nature of each of the subtask force, we incorporate some additional staff who are not on the main task force. Planning for delivery service started in late April, and we were extremely pleased to begin offering the service to patrons on May 20th. Staff started to return to the building in early May to prepare, and this included polling items that were on the pick list and checking in materials that had been returned while we were or before we were closed. The task force figured out a process for deliveries that involved about 6 staff, including the driver, being in the building at one time. We provided guidance for the online forum that patrons fill out when requesting deliveries. The picture on the right-hand side of the screen is of a sanitation station. And we have these located at all staff entrances. It has the required personal protective equipment, mainly masks, as well as gloves if staff wish to use them. We have hand sanitizer and an InstaRead thermometer for staff who wish to self-test for a fever. At phase 2, we were quarantining materials for 7 days upon return. Later on, we will reduce that amount. I'm just noting it here. For those of you who haven't used our delivery service, it's a fairly easy process. You place the materials in one on hold and then fill out a delivery request form on our website. Carrie then tracks everyone who's requested delivery and routes the delivery by the area staff lives. It's a lot of work for staff involved, but given that at the time it was the only non-digital service that we were able to provide, we figured it was undoubtedly worth the effort. Account services staff were the key players in getting delivery off the ground. Thankfully, all the staff involved was very happy to be back at the library and game to offer this groundbreaking service. Carrie and I worked together on processing the deliveries for the first day, and were able to streamline the process for staff. We also reopened the book drop when we started deliveries, but we did not advertise this, mainly because we wanted to avoid a large quantity of return when we still had a very small amount of staff in the building. We had over 150 requests for the first day and around 500 during our first week. Routing the deliveries proved to be very time consuming, given that we had never offered delivery service to this volume before. In fact, no libraries in our area really do, and there isn't good routing software available for libraries. Carrie made do with MapQuest, Excel, and a lot of hard work. Since deliveries will now be a permanent service, Carrie has contacted CCS about making delivery a third branch of our library in the catalog. And this eliminates the need for Excel spreadsheets and will allow account services staff to create their own routes directly. Additionally, it's easier for patrons because they can now choose what specific materials to be delivered and still pick up some materials if they wish to. Before, it was an all or nothing option. Overall, our delivery service was extremely successful. Patrons were very happy to be getting their materials again and grateful to our staff for offering this unique service. Now on to phase 3. We started planning for Curbside before we even got deliveries off the ground. We knew that during Curbside, we'd have to have more staff in the building. And we watched as many libraries in nearby states and locally, mainly Gale Borden, had long lines of cars when they first reopened at Curbside. However, we hope that by having a greater range of hours than other area libraries and by offering deliveries, we could avoid crowds here. The task force planned a model of curbside service that would allow us to handle maximum demand without having patrons make appointments for pickup of material. We decided on a Portillo's model where patrons pull up to the front entrance. Staff then takes their last name and 4 digits of library cards. The patrons' materials are pulled from the hold shelf and checked out to their card and placed in a plastic bag. Next, the materials are delivered to the patron's vehicle. We also offered phone service for all the hours that we were open during curbside. The Additional Services Committee worked to come up with questions that they thought patrons would have about curbside service and compiled a list of FAQ questions, which I then went through and answered, so staff would have accurate and consistent answers to give our patrons on the phone. One of our biggest challenges during curbside was scheduling. We had to overhaul the public services schedule entirely to just provide the services we needed. Rather than having department schedules as we usually do, we just had one big curbside schedule with shifts relating to curbside service, phone duty, and summer lunch service. Our curbside schedule included staff that normally don't work with the public, including IT, HR, PR, and administrative staff. We recalled a few staff from furlough to have coverage for curbside service. Since many staff hadn't been inside the building since March, we created training on new safety precautions for working in the building. And a shout out to Brittany, who created a safety PowerPoint for staff to view. We thankfully never saw huge lines of cars for curbside pickup. This is likely because our strategy worked by having extended hours and continuing to offer deliveries. Demand for curbside delivery was extremely manageable. We were surprised by the volume of calls that we received when we reopened, especially for the first couple of days. And the FAQ really came in handy for helping the staff answer patron questions. One challenge was that returns really picked up during this time. We moved the book drop to the parking lot to avoid cross traffic during curbside, and staff had to empty the book drop several times a day. Though it had been open since mid-May, demand for returning materials saw a steep increase as soon as we offered curbside. Additionally, we noticed many people came by wanting to print documents through their email. This wasn't something that we initially planned to offer. However, staff proved very flexible and we were able to begin offering this service as soon as our second day of curbside. Patrons would email our library help account and staff would print out the document and put them in a folder for pickup. Overall, curbside went smoothly. Staff were excited to get to interact with patrons again, and patrons were thrilled to finally return all of our materials that they had for months. Okay, on to phase 4. Reopening to the public has always been our main goal since we closed. The Safe Reopening Taskforce started working on procedures long before we opened for curbside. We wanted to make sure that we ordered the necessary protective equipment long before we opened our doors. In order to prepare for in-person services, the Safe Reopening Task Force identified what services we were able to offer right away and what we needed to wait a while to offer. We identified and ordered safety equipment that was necessary for reopening, and I'm going to go over what specific safety measures and equipment we put in place in greater detail in a minute. Additional prep included moving the book drop back to its place next to the front entrance. Scheduling mostly returned to normal, with most furloughed staff being recalled to cover customer service desks and phone shifts. For each public service department, we have at least one staff assigned per service desk and one staff assigned for phone duty for every hour that we're open. We updated safety training a little bit for reopening, and we made sure that all staff were trained, including those newly returning. I added a wellness check to payroll software, so staff are screened for COVID-19 symptoms every time they punch in. Now I'll go over the safety measures we put in place in both libraries. We have hand sanitizer wipes available for patrons to wipe down the self-checks before and after each use. Staff also monitor the self-checks and wipe them down as necessary. At the Dundee Library, we moved around a self-check. So basically all of the self-checks on the first floor are up at the front near the entrance. And the reason why we did that was to make it possible for patrons to socially distance while waiting in line for checkout. And we have a stanchion, which is a rope thing, basically, and floor signage to help facilitate patrons to know where 6 feet apart is. And we have a similar setup at Randall Oaks. We have installed plexiglass shields at each public service desk to protect patrons and staff from airborne droplets. Based on guidelines from the Realm Project, which is a study that is looking at the life of the virus on library materials, we reduced the quarantine time for materials to 3 days, and they spent 3 days in gray bins as soon as they're returned. To help quarantine materials, patrons must return all materials in the book drop, and we have turned off our sorters to prevent items from being returned there. Since it is a very long walk from the Randall Oaks book drop to the entrance, however, we have gray bins at the library for people who still bring materials inside. We have signage promoting safety throughout both of our locations, including floor signage indicating where patrons should stand for 6 feet of separation. Kirsten did a great job incorporating the Restore Illinois graphics into our signage. In the right-hand corner of my slide, you can see the sign we have at all our entrances. We also have smaller signs using the same graphics on display throughout both locations. Because computer usage would cause patrons to stay longer in the building for more than 1 hour and requires a lot of surfaces to be sanitized after each use, we are holding off on opening our computer areas for now. However, we greatly increased the number of hotspots circulating, adding 28 to our collection. We hope by providing additional hotspots, patrons who don't have access to the internet at home are still able to get access to it through the library. To discourage patrons from lingering as well and reduce the number of surfaces that we need to sanitize on a regular basis, we removed all furniture from the public floors that was meant for public use. You can see 2 images here of our staff areas, including a makeshift one at Randall Oaks, which is where we're currently storing our furniture. In the right-hand corner, you can see our teen section, which has had its booths removed. When this is all over, we look forward to updating the seating in our teen section. Here's an example of our staff finding creativity during COVID. Our youth services librarian used the empty tables in the department to create book displays, which is excellent because we never have enough room for book displays. Printing and phone service is still extremely popular in phase 4. And while staff have reported busy shifts in some departments, mainly the adult and teen services department, we have avoided large crowds of people using the library at one time. And I believe that this is because the safety measures we have in place discouraging patrons from lingering, as well as continuing to offer delivery services, have helped keep our numbers manageable. So starting today, several CCS libraries, including us, will begin participating in intra-CCS library loan again, which means that we will be sharing materials again. Woohoo! Not all CCS libraries are open for sharing yet, though the vast majority are. About 20 libraries are currently participating in sharing materials. The Safe Reopening Task Force and subcommittees continue to work on how and when we can offer additional services, including computers, copying and faxing, and in-person tech appointments. However, we realize that cases might rise in Illinois and we might return to a phase 3 or 2 in the near future, possibly before we are even able to expand our services further. Luckily, we have already developed procedures for each of these phases and have a game plan in place in case we need to roll back services. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I just want to give a shout out to all of the many staff who have participated in either the main task force or one of our sub-task force. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Heather. Could you tell us how many employees are physically in the building these days?
Probably depends on the hour, but I would guess like no more than like 20.
Okay, so a max would be 20 spread throughout the building,
Yeah,
right?
not
Okay.
including people in their offices though.
Yeah, and how many have been called back from furlough? You mentioned-
It's sort of up in the air because we have people who we've called back who still aren't quite yet able to return, but I believe the number is 16 at the moment.
And we initially let how many go on furlough? How many we furlough?
32.
32, so about half have been recalled.
Yeah,
And
actually,
more if
it's
they
wrong,
decided
because
not.
I forgot, we had 3 that were called back earlier, so it's about 20 total that have been recalled.
Okay,
Thanks, Richard. I
Okay.
had the same question.
and
Heather, a question
Okay, go
on
ahead.
Mike Tennis, a question on the patrons or visitors to the both Randall Oaks and Dundee Library. Is it anywhere near normal? In particular, I'm wondering what Randall Oaks is like.
Well, Randall Oaks, when I checked earlier, has mostly been slow, but we have limited hours over there. I would defer to Brittany for the most recent information on Randall Oaks, but last week they were mostly slow.
Thank you.
Heather, did you say that interlibrary was started today or will start?
Well, they opened it up, so like libraries right now are pulling pick lists and sending out materials. So likely the materials will actually start coming in like Thursday and Friday of this week.
Okay. Thank you.
And did you say that deliveries will continue? Is that
Yes,
correct? Okay.
we plan on permanently offering them.
Has
Post-COVID, we're going to continue. That is going to be a library service from now on. People love it.
oh, okay. Has the volume of deliveries dropped off since the doors were open to the building?
Technically, yes, it's dropped down steadily since we offered curbside.
Good. And early on, you said that our library has progressed through this reopening process more quickly than our neighboring libraries. Can you give some examples, maybe, or?
Well, so I believe Algonquin didn't open until later in July, and same with Huntley. For not for curbside, for in-person.
Nothing.
And we were one of the first libraries, I believe only Gail Borden started providing service before us when we did deliveries. Every other library waited for curbside, which all began more or less around the same time.
Algonquin didn't open, it wasn't open last week because somebody asked me about, interlibrary. They contacted me about it, and I called Algonquin just to see what they would say, and they said they weren't open yet. And I think that was Wednesday.
I think they
Opened yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
Crystal Lake is not open yet. Barrington is not open yet. I just heard this evening, I don't think Gila is open yet. So a lot of libraries are not open yet.
Have you guys heard any reliable information about whether or not we're going to go back a phase anytime soon? Or are you just kind of planning for the worst, hoping for the best?
I would say planning for the worst, hoping for the best, but all of our stuff are tied to the Restore Illinois phases. So it's really up to the governor's orders. If we get issued phase 3, then we're going to move back to curbside.
I had a question on that. I mean, for the same sub-regions that were just created, instead of the 4 regions, there's 10. I think that applies to libraries as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I had one question from Heather. Your presentation was excellent. Thank you very much. In the written report, there was mention of signage encouraging patrons to wear masks. So are masks required or not?
They are required for all who are able to wear them.
Have there been any issues with patrons?
Would know.
I also see that you're providing those if someone walks in without a mask?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And I don't think we've really had to do too much of that either.
I want to congratulate you on a well thought out process and the idea of putting a task force together, and seems like a perfect way to handle this whole mess, if you will.
Thank you. It's been exciting to work on this.
I bet. Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions for Heather? Well, thank you, Heather. I echo Dave's comments. I think it was a well thought out program. It was good to see that you involved the staff in developing this, and congratulate you for reopening, but doing it safely.
Thank you.
I would just like to add to that as well. When I ran for office, because I was a write-in, I put things on Facebook, and so I get things from people off and on Facebook about the library. I get questions like whether or not inter-office, and I believe I got at least 10 things at different times. They were excited about delivery, they were excited about curb service, and everything was complimentary. And so in one respect, I'm sorry I advertised because I got some negative things at first, but now I'm really glad that I did advertise on Facebook, because I get a lot of really nice, warm feedback about our library, and it just makes me beam. And just for the record, I got my sticker at the license the other day too. So. But I am so proud of our library.
Yes.
And proud of you guys.
Well, I'm just grateful for Heather. The reason why I had the doors open on July 6th was because of the hard work that she and the task force put into getting it all together. I don't think there's anything that they didn't think of. I mean, every time Heather would say, okay, now we're thinking about this and we're putting together this, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. So I certainly couldn't be happier. So thank you, Heather. Also, great presentation. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Heather.
Next up on the director's report is referendum timeline. And I'm going to share my screen for this. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, super. So I don't know if you remember this calendar, but apparently I just have a thing for this fillable online calendar. So I'm using this graphic again. I was trying to think of a way to make it very clear to the board what to expect in the coming months, and I thought this was just a nice, concise way to cover it. So This is, if we continue down the road that we've started back in November, then these are what we can expect to have happen with each board meeting in the next 10 months. So with July, it's our hope that we'll be able to proceed with our discussion of the non-binding letter of intent. And if all goes well with that tonight and in the coming weeks, that would lead to a contract discussion in the open session of the August meeting. If the library and the seller agree to the non-binding letter of intent, the board would then authorize our attorney to adopt a contract in August. And if that contract then happens, then we have the due diligence period in September and October, leading to the completion of a formal plan resolution. The plan resolution would be a board action saying this is our plan moving forward using the information provided by Engberg Anderson Architects and Lamp Construction. So they've got the figures, we've been looking at some rough figures already, but this would all be put into a formal plan that would also be discussed in open session and available for the public to weigh in on. And then the board would pass a resolution in November for that plan, which would lead up to the election ordinance in the December board meeting. And even though the election is in April, we would want to vote on that in the December board meeting because the date that the filing is due is the same day as the January board meeting. So we would definitely want to have that vote to put it on the ballot in December. The other thing that would need to happen in December is the financing ordinance. So we'll create a financing ordinance based on how much money we would need that's determined in the plan resolution. And we would say publicly in December, we are going to have a financing ordinance on the ballot in February. Again, that's a long lead time, but you need to have the financing ordinance posted and notice of hearing posted in the newspaper and posted in the library for at least 30 days. So again, we would want to do that in December for a February hearing. I've noted in January, this thing that's on here actually doesn't have anything to do with the board meeting. We would have to have the notice of hearing published in the paper and online in early January so that we could have the hearing in February. And then after the hearing, the board would vote on the financing ordinance. March, we can take a breath. And April 6th would be the consolidated election. And at that point, it would be up to the voters to decide if we're proceeding and how we're proceeding. So that is what our timeline looks like right now. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Lauren, Mike Tennis. When would the vote be certified? Do you know?
After the election, I think it's 30 days. You cannot, I was reading, you can't proceed forward on anything with bonds until at least 30 days. And I can't tell if that's 30 days after April 6th or 30 days after certification. So sometime in May. So don't know the exact date.
Could we have a copy of this timeline?
Yes, I will email it to y'all.
Anyone else? Well, it tells us where we have to be when in order to be prepared for an August 6th referendum if that's the way we go. So thank you for putting that together, Heather or Lauren. I think it's we need to keep these dates in mind.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Department head reports. Were there any questions? I know the director's report was very long. We'll talk about the capital appropriations bill as we get onto those exhibits. There was the good news on interlibrary loan. And the book drops. Did anyone have any questions or concerns about the plan for the book drops?
Lauren, I do have a question on your July goals schedule.
Mm-hmm.
July 13th was an East Dundee Joint Review Board TIF meeting.
Yes.
Could you, do you have any information on that to share with us?
My information was, I didn't remember the meeting until 3:15. My bad. I looked at my calendar. I was like, oh my gosh. And those things are over in like 20 minutes. So no, I have no idea what happened at that joint review board meeting. I'll be honest with you, Mike, I've attended so many of these. I can't believe this is the first one you asked me about when I completely missed it. No, I have no idea. Sorry.
I just wanted to call out really quickly that I was amazed at the 5,000 plus lunches in June.
Yes.
Holy cow. And then 450 plus program attendees for the tween, 3rd to 6th graders.
I was saying, the whole lunch program is Heather's baby. So in addition to everything she's done for Taskforce, she has spearheaded those 5,200 lunches have all been coordinated by her. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just what going to the apartments and doing everything that was done was just way to get into the community and really help. So well done, Heather and team.
Yeah, and that we've got 7 trained site supervisors. So that has given us a lot of flexibility in going out in the community and getting these lunches distributed. And because in conceptually, it's this great idea. And then in practice, when it's 95 degrees and you're standing outside on asphalt for 2 solid hours, it's a lot of work. I mean, that is a big ask, and staff have been phenomenal about it. Phenomenal. Folks are deeply committed to this community, and it shows in the efforts they've put forth in the past month.
I don't think I have any questions. The comment I was going to make was, I thought in reading the director's report and the department head report, I think there was more stuff to celebrate this time than I can remember. And I've been on the board for a while. So, I mean, some of the things that we called out, the lunches, the delivery service, the interlibrary loans. I mean, I am a neat patron, so you guys know I've been waiting for that. So, I mean, even something like that is really important. And then I was looking at some of the services that we're offering. When you say Sean is teaching JavaScript coding as a teen program, which is awesome. And then the testimonial for Erica for helping people with Zoom and with video conferencing, like that is so like timely and relevant. And it just sounds like she's doing an awesome job with it. And when you have a patron who writes this long, paragraph long email going on and on about how helpful and how said kind, patient, and calm, it's like, that's exactly what we'd want to hear. So I just thought there was lots of really good stuff in the reports this month. So.
I just wanted to add that being from Barrington School District for all the years, I have a lot of contacts in Carpentersville. And because part of the school district from Carpentersville is 220. So I knew they didn't know about the free lunches, but they're in our library community. And so I contacted a few of my former students, and they emailed me back and said, thank you so much. And they extended it through the neighborhood. And one particular student of mine who happens to be a real favorite contacted me and said, you have no idea how much this helped my family. And so I, once again, after hearing your description, it's amazing to me. I still marvel at how small we are and how many patrons we have and how much we do. I think our staff is just amazing. So I'm thrilled.
This is going to sound trivial coming after that, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the people who are writing blog posts these days. I feel like the increased blog presence is a really personal and effective way to really connect with the community and to give the community a way to kind of see the personalities of the librarians and see the different ways that they're knowledgeable and helpful. And I really like that. I've been enjoying reading the blog posts, and I think that that's been really good.
That's great.
Not-
Jason is
Not
on
trivial
this
at all.
call. Yeah, he's done a lot of work. They're not they're very integrated with everything that's going on in the library. It's not just a post of what's going, of one person's thoughts. It's related to the program. It's related to the collections. It's related to current events. Yeah, I love that feedback. Thank you.
Oh, and of course you got to call out Karen's savings before that gets buried. Like, it's always amazing to see what she does and what what our constituency gets with her savings ability. So
she exceeded her goals for last year. Yep.
Yeah, well done on that too.
I heartily agree. I think she has done, not only this year, but in previous years, she has really done a great job of making sure that we get the best deal we can with every purchase. And that's the mark of a good purchase, to do that.
I'd like her to negotiate like my next car or house or something.
Anything else?
Oh, and John posted about the hotspots, and I have one right here. And I am using it. I'm using it for my phone to make sure in case I need to call in on audio or anything like that. But yeah, I'm on vacation in Michigan with really bad cell service, and this was my backup so I could join.
Lauren, you asked about the plan for book drops?
Yes.
Okay. Wait, could you just review that again? It sounds like we're eliminating the one at Culver's.
The one at Jewel is rusted out, and it's in bad shape. So we're going to scrap that one entirely. And the one at Culver's, we're going to bring back into the library and scrape it's in good shape, but it still says it's the Dundee Township Library District, which we haven't been for almost a decade. And the lettering is bad on it. A lot of it is missing letters. So we're going to scrape that off and put new decals on it using our brand, right? Because our logo is awesome. And put that at near the Village Hall, at the Gilbert's Village Hall, near the drop-off for their water bills. So they already have a very nice drive-through where you can deposit things in the slot. And so just a little bit down from there. And their facilities team is willing to install it. And I said the library will pay for the concrete. They'll provide the labor to dig it out, right? They'll dig it out and pour the concrete. So we definitely got the easier end of that deal. So, yeah.
Do you think that there's a cause for expanding, the number of book drops in the community, or?
I would not be opposed to it, but I would rather hold off until the library is open all the time, because we use the van so much of the day for deliveries. If there are a lot more book drops, that's a lot more driving around to do pickups.
Okay, good. Thanks.
All right, there's no more questions. Then, one more thing on the dashboard. So we did finish the fiscal year, and so I just wanted to point out that we have always run a surplus at the end of the year, and this year with we were saving more than $1,000 a month just on utilities with the building not open. And so we ended the fiscal year with a $700,000 surplus this year.
Oh.
The gravity of that is the more we bank in the operating fund now, the better off we are long-term as we make these plans. So it was a very positive end to from a fiscal standpoint.
Okay. Anything else, Lauren?
That's it for the director's report.
Oh, any other questions for Lauren before we move on? Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion for the consent agenda, are there any items anyone would like left off?
Mike Tennis here, Richard. I would like to leave off A1B, the check voucher.
B is Bravo?
A1B.
A1B is Bravo.
Correct.
Okay. Any others? Okay, may I have a motion to approve consent agenda items A1A, then dropping down to A1C through A1J, omitting A1B. May I have such a motion?
Nikki moves to approve A1A, A1C, A1J.
Second.
That
Who
was
was the second?
Christina, Chris. Christina.
Okay, Chris, may we have a roll call vote, please, on those items?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris, yes. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Nikki,
Yes.
thank you. Christina,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes. Okay, item A1B. Mike, what you got on that?
Just one question. There was a disbursement to Peters Electric for $5,685. It's a vendor I don't recall seeing in the past, and given that the library has been closed for the most part during this period of time, I'd like to know what that's for.
Peters Electric is our electric contractor, and we had side lights around the building, and they were all broken. And so he replaced all those exterior lighting.
Not vandals, though, right? Just
No,
broken?
no, just time. You know, they're not super bright. I mean, so they'd go out and you wouldn't notice one was out, and then over time, we just.
Okay, thank you.
But Michael can take care of the facility. So.
Okay, anything else on that, Mike? Okay, here nothing. May we have a motion to approve A1B, please?
So move. Mike Tennis?
is that Mike?
Move.
Brian, second.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote on A1B, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris, yes. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, moving on to no unfinished business at this time. Moving on to new business. Exhibit C1. May I have a motion to approve ordinance 2020-06.
So moved, Brian.
Okay,
Second, Chris.
second, please.
Who seconded?
Second. You did.
Brian, just for the record,
Second.
would you read the motion because it involves some dollars here?
Yes, if I have the language in front of me here. I'm sorry, I don't see the language of the motion on what I printed, Richard. If somebody else has it, maybe they could.
Is this,
Okay,
I can,
I'll go
Nikki
ahead
can
and read
do
it.
it. I can do it.
Okay, Nikki, go ahead.
I move to approve ordinance 2020-06 tentative budget and appropriation in the amount of $7,472,000 $990 for the fiscal year 2020-2021 as presented.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. This is the annual tentative budget and appropriation. And as usual, I want to ask Lauren to briefly go over this, as you seem to have an uncanny knowledge of all of this.
And because the process
So-
on these documents is not intuitive in the slightest. So in May, we talked about the working budget for this fiscal year, and in June, we approved the working budget for this fiscal year. And that is the document that we refer to the whole rest of the time. All the documents in the consent agenda all refer to the working budget. Whenever we talk about budget, it's the working budget. However, from the county's standpoint, when they talk about budget, they're talking about the appropriation. We call it the B&A, the budget and appropriation. This is the amount that we are legally able to expend. And where it gets weirder, the amount in the appropriation that we set, this is the tentative one in July, and then we will post it so that the public can weigh in. And then there's a B&A hearing in September. And after that hearing, then the board will vote to approve that. And then that gets filed with the county. So that is then the maximum amount that the library district is permitted to spend in fiscal year 2021. The thing that we always need to remember is when we set the levy in November, the levy is set based on what this appropriation is. Even though that levy wouldn't be money that's not received until June and September of next year, but that levy is actually this year's levy, even though it's next year's money. Clear?
As mud.
Yeah.
Look, Lauren, I have some questions. Mike Tennis.
Yeah.
In the format, each one of the funds, you start out with a cash balance at the beginning of the fiscal year for each one of the funds named in the appropriation.
Yes.
And it starts out with cash balance at the beginning of the fiscal year. It's actually the fund balance, not the cash balance.
That is true. It is not cash. Yeah.
So we might want to
investments.
change that wording to say fund rather than cash balance.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I mean, if there are prepaids in there, I mean, is it cash? I got to think about that.
What triggered it was I looked at the June 30 balance sheet.
Right. Which is where I got the figures. That's how I had $21 left in the FICA fund, right? I'm like, I'll just make it very clear. But that makes you, I mean, this whole thing was reviewed by the attorney and he said it was good, but now I got to think on that. Should it?
But remember,
I mean, I am putting fund balance in for now. Should it be cash balance, not fund balance? I don't think so. I mean, he did say the wording is up to us at that level of text. So, yeah, I will change it to fund balance for the September one.
Okay. And one other question on the general corporate fund, excluded from the amount is the working cash of $159,000 some odd dollars. Why?
Because we don't appropriate anything out of the working cash fund.
I tried to look it up with the statutes to find out, what should be included and not excluded, and it really didn't get into that level of detail. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is our spending plan, and since we're not planning on spending anything out of it, we used to have a building and maintenance fund too that we didn't spend anything out of, and it wasn't. I'm not sure spending out of it.
And last question was on the special reserve fund. Included in the special reserve fund appropriation is $3 million construction for the West Side Library, if approved by voters. Okay, never mind. Scratch that.
But what's your feeling on the wording? That was the thing that Roger said. You can word that any way you want. And I felt it looked presumptuous if I just had something in there about spending it. And I thought, well, I mean, it can be very clear. It's only in there if approved by voters. So you can change it if if you'd like something else, or if you're good with that wording, good with that wording.
What I was thinking of at the time, I was thinking about the Dundee Library and expenditures on that. I wasn't. Never mind. Forget the question.
Okay.
So actually, though, I had a similar question, Lauren. Is that in the background information as we wrote up the motion? It talks about appropriating an amount in case we decide to begin a library remodel in fiscal 2021. $3 million is appropriated for this purpose. And then once we got into the numbers itself, it talks about $3 million for the construction of the West Side Library. So is that consistent or is that inconsistent?
Well, in looking at the referendum question, there is some ambiguity about whether we're constructing a West Side Library or remodeling that building into a library. So remodel really works for either or I guess both locations, which is, yeah, it would be inconsistent if we were to change it from construction of West Side Library. Where I got, then remodel, I don't know.
Actually, the
I
word
struggled with the words, which is why if you have suggestions for different, I'd be open to them.
Maybe
actually,
no one else would pick up on this the way we did, but I think I saw remodel. I thought the remodeling we're talking about tonight for the Dundee Library. I didn't think remodeling the Dominic's. I consider that construction. So I don't. But like I said, maybe we're just too close to it and we're picking up things other people wouldn't.
But in terms of for the public hearing, probably should make it clear that it's not necessarily just the Dundee Library or a West Side Library, but actually acquisition, property acquisition and remodeling.
That I like that. Property acquisition and remodeling.
That's better. Yep.
And do we need the if approved by voters? Because if it's not approved by voters, we'd still use the 3 million for the Dundee.
That's true,
and
I
have to do that anyway.
Although, if the referendum were not to pass, we would not be spending $3 million in the next year. I mean, there's,
that is true.
The only way it would be the 3 is if the referendum were to pass and we came to an agreement on land acquisition. But I mean, that's why I'm kind of leaning towards property acquisition and remodeling. And that's it. And then it's vague enough that it would cover any and all.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
Any other discussions?
Just to refresh our memory then, is this what we did last time too? So we had a large DNA that we approved with like significant funds coming out of special reserve, like when we were at this point last year leading up to the referendum?
In 2016
or whatever.
In 2015, we approved a gigantic appropriation. Yeah.
Okay.
No, in 2015, we approved a gigantic levy. That's it. We didn't, because, no, I think we had the land in there because I had to add a budget item into I had to create a budget code for it. So no, yeah, we appropriated for it in 2015.
Okay.
Anything else? Did I hear someone? I guess not hearing anything. Chris, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Do we need to reread that just to make sure? Nikki?
Yeah, we're doing it with the amended changes in the wordage.
I thought she wasn't going to change the wording until September. Are we going to change it now?
We're approving the tentative BNA with a change in the one wording. And then when it's presented at the BNA hearing in September, it will have that change in it.
Okay, okay. So do you want to reread it or just go ahead and vote?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Let's
Dave?
Move ahead.
Yes.
Chris, yes. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item C2, Director's Employment Agreement. May I have a motion to approve the renewal of the Director's Employment Agreement effective July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021 at a salary of $117,600.
I move. Christina.
Second. Dave?
Dave for a second. As you know, we went through our evaluation, agreed on the salary. Christine and I presented the evaluation and that in the new agreement with the director. And signed the agreement. Now it's we're going through the formal approval process. Any discussion needed here? Okay, can we move right on to a roll call vote, please?
Dave?
Yes.
Chris, yes. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes. Okay, the next two exhibits perhaps came as a surprise. I sent an email to everyone just to kind of give a little background in addition to Lauren's monthly report about some things that need to be done at the Dundee Library, irrespective of what happens with the referendum. We've got doors that won't accommodate wheelchairs. We've got entrance so far away from any of our handicap parking that it's an embarrassment to us. We've got a lot of unused, well, not unused, but underused space as a result of the township moving out. And we need to address these things. And Lauren, why don't you just pick up from there in regards to the funding that's been available by the state.
So I after the governor signed the appropriations bill, the text of it went out and it was, you know, 1,000 pages, more than 1,000 pages, I think. So Karen Worley is a very good sport. I asked her to go through it and tell me all the libraries that got money. I didn't even know that we were one of the libraries that got money. So then I was doing a dance, right? Very excited because we got $150,000 and that's nothing to sneeze at, right? That's a nice chunk of change. And I was happy. I was happy until I sorted that Excel spreadsheet and found that the Joliet Public Library was awarded $6.3 million and made my $150,000 seem not as celebratory. So I went back to that process and thought about when I received an email saying that this grant money was going to be available for shovel-ready projects. And if you could get your grant application in the next 7 days, you'd be eligible. And we got nothing, right? I did not have a shovel-ready project to submit. But I have worked for this library for 6 years, and we have projects that we know need to get done. We just need to get them shovel-ready. So it seemed to me, if Springfield decides to go on another spending spree, and one never knows when that might happen, that we ought to be ready if it does happen again. And so all we need to do to get shovel ready is to get the architect and construction manager. We've already gone through the whole legal RFQ process. We have our architect and construction manager. We just need to get the plan together for Dundee. Now, if we go to referendum and it passes in April, then the costs for the Dundee remodel will be part of the bond issuance at that time. But if that referendum doesn't pass, the need is still here. So I don't see any reason why we don't proceed with the whole planning process for Dundee now. And then if in November or some other time, you know, I'm wondering about November, because if Springfield gets on a high, if they pass this change to the way income tax is structured, they decide to spend that money in advance, which, you know, they've done before. We need to jump on that bandwagon. So if we have the architect's plans and the construction manager's plans ready, then boom, I can apply for that grant on the spot. So that is my hope.
Do we know for sure that that's the definition of shovel ready, meaning having written plans with estimates and, you know, contractors lined up? And I mean, what?
Well, that was how it was written. I cannot predict the future at all, but that was how it was written for that grant. The other thing is, it also said the most that Springfield was going to award was $2 million, and the fact that they gave 6.3, they have a legislator that loves the Joliet Public Library, and she fought to get them So, you know, it's a long shot no matter what. However, I at least want my hat in the ring.
I think it makes sense. These things need to be, and I think it would behoove us. We're not wasting any money here.
Right.
The plans are the plans, and I think we should move ahead with this, is my recommendation.
I think I'm a little naive. I was surprised by how expensive the architect was. That's a lot.
What he's doing for this is a lot more than what he did in in what we set up so far with the West Side. So he's going to bring staff out here that are going to sit down and like focus groups with staff and focus groups with the public to talk about what the facility should be, to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, that it's not. And that didn't happen 4 years ago. We used an outside consulting firm for the library program before. So this way the architect then gets a chance to hear from, especially with a lot of, you know, we've had a lot of staff turnover, and library needs have changed in the past 4 years as well. Frankly, 4 years ago, I didn't care about a drive-through pickup service, right? I mean, some libraries had it, but it was like, oh, okay, nice, but a luxury. It's not a luxury now with COVID. I mean, if you have a drive-up service, you can be open and not worry about anything. There are no droplets passing through 12 feet of whatever solid glass panel. So, yeah.
Mike Tennis here. I had the same reaction as Christina when I saw the architect's proposal, and so after that initial reaction, I went back to their first proposal dated January 10th. And there they had the Dundee Library concept development and testing broken out into 3 components that added up to $28,000. Why can't we do that now? Isn't that enough for shovel ready? And I asked that from the point of view of, I remember the Dundee Park District did one of those get ready for a grant application for a park development on the east side of the Park District off of 25. I forgot what the name of it is, something Hill Park. And for the most part, it was architectural renderings was the extent of it, and very rough estimates. And they got it was close to $400,000, I believe, if I remember rightly. So I sense that if we stuck with the architect's proposal back in January, that we'd be making progress. We'd have sufficient architectural support for a grant application.
Yes, but why stop short? Because we know this is something that we know we need to do. What Joe is bidding on now is everything up to the contractor bid process. Because when I met with Joe and Ian, we talked about, do we take it as far as bidding it out to the subcontractors? And we said, on Ian's advice, he said no, because if you get to that step, people in the public might think that you're proceeding with the West Side expansion, and then you could get some bad PR from that. So,
Right.
But according to Joe and Ian, by doing all this, we will be totally ready then in April to, if we wanted to get these bid out in April, right after the referendum, if we wanted to remodel Dundee before we started on a West Side expansion. If the referendum were to pass, it would then be, the ball would be in our court if we chose to remodel Dundee first or work on the West Side first. We'd have everything done that we needed to have done. So it is more than just the bones that we would need for a grant application. It's all the steps in the process.
Do board members think that there might be some risk that if we proceed with this, that focus on the Dundee library? We got feedback now. If we focus on the Dundee library, and it becomes public knowledge of that we're taking this step, I think our first priority is expansion on the West Side. And I'm concerned that this might cause some public reprioritization. Oh, well, they're fixing up the Dundee library, so maybe we can put off a little bit longer on the West.
You know, Mike, I thought about the same thing, and I really did think the way you are. And then I also thought that if we didn't move forward, that they would say, well, what about all that unused space? And what about the changes that need to be done? Why do they need a new library? Look at all the space they're not using. And I weighed and measured it because I really did think like you, and I kind of went the other way and thought, we really need to show people we're doing all we can, and we still have these needs to accommodate all of our patrons. So I kind of flipped back and forth on that.
Yeah, I think there's the concern about being ready for shovel ready is important, but the likelihood of solicitation of applications for shovel ready projects have been diminished radically since Friday morning. Okay, because when the Speaker of the House gets the subpoenas that he got, and when the governor is also being investigated on property tax assessment matters, not a lot is going to happen, is my thought process, until there's more clarification on where these investigations are going to go. And so Build Illinois, the $45 billion that was approved in May of 2019, okay, is a 6-year program. And I just, you know, I think it helps to have something rather than nothing. And I think we can accomplish that with what the architect proposed in January, along with something smaller, similar to what was proposed by LAMP, also back in January, and that we don't have to go out and spend $75,000 now to accomplish that. If we spend $28,000 on the architect and say $10,000 on LAMP construction doing certain various tasks, and you know, I compared task by task on the construction proposal as well. I think for $38,000 rather than $75,000, we will have made progress. We will be prepared for a grant application, and we can move faster through the next steps when the time is right.
I have one question. If we decide to go that route and then we have to do all the other stuff, do we end up paying more money for the exact same thing we need if we don't do it all at once?
Only if you don't watch your statement of work closely. Task by task, you shouldn't have any redundancy in costs.
Dave, it
Ryan,
sounded
what are
like
your
you were trying
thoughts?
to say something.
No, I was, I guess what would you eliminate from the architect's proposal? Because I mean, a good chunk of that is the focus groups with staff, and I mean,
I've been through that. If you look at the workshop 1, for example, that was workshop 1 involves a study that was done by Anders Dahlgren out of called the Building Library of the Future. It's a 140 some page document that was initially they started developing in the 4th quarter of 2014. I'm concerned about spending a lot of touchy-feely time rather than more nuts and bolts.
Well, just so we're clear, so Anders Dahlgren did a library program for the east side, the Dundee remodel, and for the west side at the time, the one on Recreation Drive. And he spent a lot of time with focus groups with staff and the public, and created the 2 documents, the one that Mike's referring to, and we have used those documents extensively. As a matter of fact, just today I finished tweaking that 2016 final product to update it for what a Dundee remodel should look like. So that is providing the foundation for where the architect will start. And Joe is aware of that. The first thing he said was, will you be providing me with a library program? And I said, yes, we're going to, you know, that money was not wasted when we spent it in 2015, 2016. We're still using that as a foundation for projects moving forward. It's just that not everything that we planned for in 2015, 2016 is, as I said, what we would want in 2020. There are some changes.
Mike, I have a question for you. I did not do any, I never even thought of doing a comparison with the January thing. Are the proposal he's just provided us, as we go down through, is it pretty much sum and substance what the January proposal was in the various phases?
There was not a lot of elaboration in the January one. There was just 3 components spelled out in a block that totaled up to 104,000, and 28,000 of that was a what do they call it, a level 2, I think it was, that included the Dundee Library, and then the 3 components, which was the I don't know if I can put my hands on it right away or not, but it's if they thought they could get a meaningful deliverables with that proposal back on January 10th. Why can't it be done now? And there are certain things, especially the design work, that's getting into more detail, and that I think the various workshops and the design work is more expanded in the new proposal, and that might be the next step to take. But I don't think I thought, Lauren, from what you had to say in the cover to this recommended motion, what I got out of it was the driving force was to be prepared to take advantage of applying for state capital funds if the opportunity presented itself.
Well, that was my argument for doing this now as opposed to April. The idea was we are going to go through these steps at some point, since we know that we need to remodel Dundee. So that's why I asked Joe to quote the entire thing, because we're going to need to do the entire thing. So I thought, well, if we're going to need him to do the work anyway, and we know that we need the Dundee Library remodel, just tell me what it would cost to get the ball rolling now. So the streamlined proposal that he talked about in January, that was enough to get us to a referendum, because we specifically did not want to put a whole lot of money into an architect into a whole lot of plans that might not come to fruition if the referendum didn't pass. But since we said we want to move forward anyway.
For example, the staff spacing needs, okay? That could change for the Dundee Library, depending upon how the West Side plan develops.
That's correct. Richard brought that up this afternoon. And yes, I talked about that with Joe and Ian as well, that there would be a flexible space, and admin, the facilities workshop, and Pat's department would not be located here if we had a facility on the west side. So the plans that Joe would draw up would have, a one section that would either be one thing or another, depending on the results of the vote.
So I have two thoughts. My first is I would have to agree. I understand where you're coming from, Mike, but if we are going to do this either way, it makes sense to do it all at once. And if the rationale for doing it now is to make sure that we're ready in the event that that happens, it really doesn't matter if we do it now or in April. But to do it now, we'll be proactive and we'll be ready. So I totally agree with that. And you had brought up the question of going back to the staff and the community about library needs. And I totally see where you're coming from with that too, because it seems like 2014 wasn't that long ago. Like, needs shouldn't have changed all that much since 2014, but they probably really have. And that's the crazy things. Things in library land change with changing technology, and we have to be ready to innovate and ready to change gears, and things are so much different now than they were 6 years ago. So it would actually be really fascinating to me to see how much the needs of the staff have changed since 2014, and to be able to actually look at that, I think there's really some value in that.
Do I understand correctly that if the referendum does not pass, or we don't even bring it to referendum, we would proceed with this. Well, if let's say we don't go to referendum, we might start this before the end of the year. Is that, or?
It would be
From my perspective,
possible.
Dave, from my perspective, some amount of remodel to the Dundee Library is absolutely essential.
Right.
Now, you know, Mike, you've given me food for thought here. I'm thinking with the Dundee Library, I'm not sure we're looking at a lot of new things in the building. We're talking about relocating the entrance. We're talking about incorporating township space. We're talking about making provisions if staff finds itself on the west side of a new facility. What can we do with existing staff space? So there may not be a whole lot of you know, things that require workshops and other things for the Dundee Library, because we're not going to change the footprint of the building. We're just going to do those things we need to do to make it, first of all, ADA compliant, and secondly, incorporate underused space. So maybe there is an argument for going back to the architect and saying, you know what, this is what we really want you to do, and maybe we don't need a lot of workshops and that kind of thing, and see if he can maybe redo his proposal to incorporate this kind of remodel that we need to have, if you know what I'm saying. We're not adding a lot of bells and whistles to this building.
Richard, I would disagree with that. This is the perfect time to find out what can we do with all that space. If we're going to have to redo that main floor anyway, how do we take advantage of this, and how do we make it a better facility, regardless of if we have a west side one or not? We should still take care of the east side and make sure that library is the best library it can be. And this is the time to do it, because there's probably things that they can take advantage of because they're moving that door and they're incorporating different space and they're doing to make that a better library to serve our east side too. So I get what you're saying, but I think that's a missed opportunity there if we just say fix the door and do the downstairs when there could be a lot more that could be done.
Yeah,
I also think trying to plan changes, especially that underused space, without having focus groups, especially with the staff, that we're cutting ourselves out. They're the people that deal with it every single day, and they have ideas that the architect, I'm sure, hasn't even thought of. Just like, and the example I would give is the fact that look at all the changes we had to do with COVID, and look at you yourself, Lauren, said they thought of things that one person wouldn't have thought of. And I feel like we're cutting ourselves short by cutting out those focus groups.
And I would like to point out the focus groups that talked with Anders in 2015, almost none of those people are here anymore. And my management team right now, they have fantastic ideas. They have passion, and I think they feel empowered to try new things. And I want to bring that energy to the architects' discussions.
All right. So the point I was going to make, listening to Nikki and Chris, like, the other thing I think we have to remember going into this is this may be all we're going to be able to do. We shouldn't go into this assuming the referendum is going to pass. It went down 2-1 last time, or greater. I can't remember. So like this could be the big renovation program in the next 18 months to 2 years. So in that sense, I would agree, if we have the money in reserves, that even if there ever never is a referendum, we'd be able to afford to pay for this out of operating reserves. Then, yeah, I think we should go ahead and do it now. I don't think it makes sense to try to save a few dollars here to do some of the work later that we might as well just kick off now.
if it was again like it was before where we didn't know and we weren't necessarily going to do this for sure, I would absolutely be with you, Mike, 100%. But we are going to do this, and I'd rather do it right the first time and not try to piecemeal it, and just so we can, and I think we can show our constituency that we are trying to do the absolute best we can with the space that we have, and regardless of where you live and who you are. We're going to try to take care of you, and that's what I'm thinking.
I agree.
We do it now, and we do it right.
How many of the board members are aware that the Dundee Library was remodeled 8 years ago?
Sure.
Just 8 years ago.
It was 12 years ago.
Yeah, it has to longer than, it was before I came on the board in 2011.
It was 12 years ago. 2008 was the library remodel.
I got 2012 out of the facility manager's report of 2016, Brian Wing's report.
Brian
Might
Wing,
have been the roof.
yeah, the roof was done in 2012.
Okay. And the current architectural proposal says right under owner supplied information, a roof inspection by an independent consulting firm is recommended. We've had a lot of roof problems, even though it was done just 8 years ago then. Okay.
Right. So I had a conversation with Ian. So we still have 2 years left on our roof warranty. And at the end of my rope, I talked to Ian. I said, I just don't know what else to do. We have leaks 4 to 6 times a year on an 8-year-old roof. I said, in 2 years, this warranty is going to be up. And then what are we looking at? I said, I mean, should I be consulting an attorney? Where do we go next? And Ian was like, this definitely should not be happening. I've got a good friend that's a roof consultant. We're going to get him out there. He's going to take a look at this. He's going to figure out if your problem is labor or work materials. And, if it's materials, we're going to take the action that needs to happen to get the problem fixed, not patched, fixed. So that's a whole secondary story. The roof is... Just ask Michael. The roof is a thing. The roof has always been a thing, but that's its own thing.
On the owner supplied information in the architectural listing, they refer to an environmental assessment. Do we have any information on the asbestos conditions of the building?
I am fairly confident that there wasn't asbestos, but I'm not positive on that. I remember a conversation with Roxanne where we talked about asbestos, and I thought it was that no, there was no asbestos in the building.
Okay, so we can't supply them with any information on asbestos. We can't supply the architect who has asked for the information.
Well, but that's an issue that'll have to be resolved prior to construction, which we need to do regardless. I mean, we have the money. I don't understand the point.
I bring it up just because it can substantially impact the cost and timing of any remodeling.
Granted, but it does have to be done, though, right?
There's no question
whether we have information already or it has to be redone. So.
Has that never been assessed,
Does
Lauren?
anybody have any other comments?
I just wanted to ask Lauren, have we never had an asbestos assessment?
I don't know. I'm making a note. We have files and files of building plans and studies going back, I don't know, Karen, how many years? As long as the building's been around. So I will take a look at those tomorrow.
I would be so surprised if we hadn't, because, with schools and public buildings and everything, with everybody doing asbestos abatement, I would be shocked, even with the renewal 12 years ago, I would have thought that would have been
Agreed.
looked into.
Yeah, yeah.
Chris, I gotta add, District 300 has been going through asbestos abatement changes with their 22 buildings over the course of several years.
I know.
So
I'm appalled by that.
Well, I've heard a number of trustees that say, if we do it, let's do it right. Let's do it right the first time. I've heard a trustee say, hey, maybe we should scale things back. I threw in something that I'm a nuts and bolts guy, and I just thought there's some things that absolutely have to be done. No question about it. So, any further comments? I think it's going to be decided by a vote. Any other comments?
yes, in terms
Okay.
of, I do have another comment. It's more cosmetic than anything else. But the architect's proposal calls for a dispute resolution, and the jurisdiction, if mediation does not work, they specify the litigation jurisdiction being McLean County, Illinois. That needs to be Kane, not McLean.
Okay.
I think you're right, Mike. I didn't notice that.
It's on page 7, the second last paragraph, last line in that paragraph.
I had noticed it. I just assumed that jurisdiction was more friendly to the architecture firm, and that's why they would put it in. But it, if we should argue that we'd like it to be Kane, I am sure that's not going to tie up proceeding with the contract.
I would say we should keep that local, Mike. I agree with you.
Is McLean, like we're Western Illinois University?
Bloomington.
Where?
It's Bloomington. Normal.
I don't know. Okay, any other comments? Okay, I think it's time we take this thing to a vote. The motion that we've got on the table is that to approve pre-construction professional services for, Ingbert Anderson to plan for remodel of Dundee Library in an amount of not to exceed $50,000. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
We need a motion and a second.
Oh, we have not had a motion yet.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Well, shame on me for not insisting on a motion. Can we have a motion now, please?
So
Okay.
moved.
I move that we approve the, sorry, I'm
Who was the first one?
on the wrong one. Approve.
Christina was.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Dave second then.
Great.
Okay. Now maybe we have a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Dave.
Yes.
Chris, yes. Mike.
No.
Brian. Brian.
Yes.
Nikki.
Yes.
Christina.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, now hand in hand with that is the construction manager. May I have a motion to approve the pre-construction professional services for Lamp Incorporated?
So moved.
Who was that?
Christina.
Thank you.
Christina, and Nikki seconds.
And that is in an amount not to exceed 25,000. And I think Ian has pretty much listed out the services he feels necessary to get this thing ready to get it out to bid. We won't take it out to bid, obviously, but we'll get it ready in a condition we'll be able to do that in short order. Any comments, questions on this one? Not hearing any. No comments on this. It's pretty straightforward.
Just for the record, Lamb proposed on January 8th to update the cost for construction of the Dundee Library, and the proposal was for $15,000. Now it's $25,000 plus another $5,000 for the bid package, bidding phase process.
Yeah, but Mike, in January, his proposal was just was to give us a cost proposal for renovating that building. It did not get detailed to the point of the bid package preparation, work phasing, and those kinds of things. This is a much more detailed thing than his proposal in January.
I understand that. There's 4 different components that he's added compared to January.
Anything else? Any other comments from any trustees? May we go to a roll call vote, please?
Dave?
Yes.
Chris, yes. Mike?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes. Okay, that's the last item of business for the open session. We will have an executive session beginning immediately after we vote to go into executive session. In order to do that, I've got to read the following. Executive session will be held in accordance with 5 ILCS 120/2 C5, purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. There will be no further action after the executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting and go into executive session for the purpose of going into executive session?
Nickety? I can't even say my own. Nikki motions to adjourn to executive session.
Christina seconds.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Dave?
Yes.
Chris, yes. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes, it is now 8:54. Valley Public Library District of July 21st, 2020 at 9:49. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Dave? This is present or absent?
I'm sorry, yeah, this is not a roll call. Yeah, roll call vote to see who's here.
Right.
Here.
Now,
Here.
going back into session.
Chris is here. Mike?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Nikki?
Here.
Christina?
Here.
Richard.
Here. Okay, there being no other business to be transacted, I will entertain a motion to adjourn for the evening.
So moved. That was Nikki.
Please, somebody.
Nikki. Who else?
Brian.
Who seconded? Brian?
Okay,
Okay,
so
you ready?
one more roll call vote.
Jane?
Yes.
Chris? Yes. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes, we are now adjourned at 9:50.